All right, thank you, Mr. President. We got you scheduled for November 1st to speak with Chinese President Xi.
That's right. It's going to be a great talk.
Yes, sir. You requested a briefing on leverage each side had in the negotiation. I'm ready to give that to you now, sir, if you're ready.
Yes. Please proceed. Keep it brief. You know, Jaimeson, the rare earths. I don't like it. I really don't like what she's doing. Great guy. I've got a great relationship, but I don't like what he's doing with these rare earths.
Yes, sir. Yes, sir. Why don't we start with that then? You'll recall that they hit us with the large-scale export controls. They're targeting rare earths, and in particular, heavy rare earth elements. They made this public policy.
The heavy ones.
Specifically, they are targeting holmium, erbium, thulium, europium, and ytterbium. I think I'm pronouncing that right. Now, this is not just the base metal, but they're also alloys and products containing those heavy rare earth elements. They're also restricting the processing equipment, so centrifuges, for instance, to make this stuff. You see, the hard part isn't mining the ore or even mining the element necessarily. It's that these minerals are chemically so similar that it is hard to separate them, but their basicity is different enough so that you can use a solvent.
Listen, Jaimeson, I don't need to know all this. Why don't you get on with it?
Yes, sir. Since we documented in that trade representative, the non-tariff barrier publication this past March, the Chinese have been gearing up to utilize these rare earth in strategic negotiations since at least November of 2023. That's when they issued the regulations to trace the mining, production, refining, transfer, and end use of rare earths.
Of course, they knew they could get away with it with Biden, worst president.
By tracing each step of production, they can ensure no leaks, if you follow me. Right? They'll make it very difficult to smuggle any of it out.
How much could be smuggled?
It's hard to say. I think it's contingent on whether or not the Chinese government will fill the market void left from the export control. Now, the Chinese government could purchase and store the goods at the previous market price, or they could just say you can't sell it. If it's the latter option, then I think the exporters will have a very huge financial incentive to try and smuggle some of this stuff out. But if it's the former, and the Chinese government buys it, then much less I think will get out, but TBD on that. But regardless, you'll know that the DoD recently took a stake in MP Materials a few months back. Now they're based out of Las Vegas. They have that California Mountain Pass mine and the magnet manufacturing facility. Now they were and currently are a very strategic company here. Now, they're going to ramp up their 10x manufacturing plant, although the new facility is expected to begin commissioning in 2028.
28, that's way too slow. Way too slow. We got to speed this up.
Yeah. Now, that's just the domestic manufacturing facility. That might just be for magnets. Now, we're talking about rare earth elements. Now, luckily, the company also provides every one of the heavy rare earths which are currently under the export control, or at least threatened to be. So that's a good thing. Now, we'll be sure to talk to them about scaling up the production there as well, but still, I don't think they'll be able to fill the total U.S. demand for years.
It's a tough issue. Who else can fill that?
Looks like there's a couple companies scattered about. We have Solvay in France. We got one in Malaysia. Retech in Norway might be able to do this. Serra Verde and Aclara from Brazil. And Vietnam might also be a good source for the raw earth stuff, perhaps as well.
Vietnam, great trade deal with them. Great trade deal. I'm sure
really
they'd
good,
help.
Sir.
Over in California, Gavin Newsom, it was a total disaster. The fires at the start of the year, I had to come in and have the water start flowing again. I think I have to do the same thing. I'm going to make the magnets start flowing through California and through America.
Yes, sir. But regardless, I think the point here is that the Chinese have a window of opportunity. Now, they have probably maybe 5 years, I don't know, it's hard to say exactly, during which that they can cause us some pain until we fill the supply gap. Now, they know that that window is closing. The other telling thing here is that of all the millions of products out there, these are what they're squeezing us on. Now, this might be it. So we could feel a little good about that. Now, we've poked the dragon, they've showed us the claws, and they're made out of holmium.
What kind of leverage do we have?
Well, they certainly didn't seem to like those port fees. Now, that was a new one. They came over and they were threatening chaos in the entire world if we didn't pull back on the port fees. Now, that seems to be a sore spot. And then, of course, the if you wanted to try to look at the Chinese economy, now that's in somewhat of a deflationary space. You might be able to take advantage of that. If suppliers do not have the US to export to, then it might push prices down further on their side, which may be enough to lead to a deflationary spiral. The other thing I'd add is innovation in general is currently, I think, on our side, although that might be closing as well. Now, in a tech war, it's not so much how good your technology is right now, but how quickly can you innovate? So long as we continue to innovate faster, there might be a gap that wouldn't close. Now, this is in stark contrast with the supply chain gap, like the rare earths, which can be filled. In that case, that gap is a static one, whereas the tech gap is a dynamic one. So in that sense, China might feel as though it has a window, but it knows it's closing. Now, that might make them get a little desperate. I don't know. A little worried about Taiwan, but it depends on how you handle these negotiations.
We're going to do a great job. No matter what happens, I know.
Yes, sir.
It's going to be great.
Yes, sir.
Wait, sorry, do I have a line? What other kind of leverage might they have?
The biggest one, they have is time. And, sir, if I'm honest, I think it's a big one. They can afford to be patient with these trade negotiations. Now, they can just bide their time until you're out of office and try their luck with the new administration. I think that's the biggest problem that we face. And let me tell you how I think they're going to do it. They're going to sit across from you and they will make sure that the conversation is focused on the tit for tat stuff that we're doing, the tariffs and the export controls. Okay. They're playing defense and they have sort of the defensive advantage here because they just want to go back to the status quo. So all this stuff that we added on, they could make the whole conversation about that. That's what they're going to want to talk about. But it's all superficial. Now, remember, your goal is to get rid of the non-tariff trade barriers so that we can continue to trade with China, which we want, on a more level playing field and then get to a zero trade deficit.
That's right. This trade deficit, China's been ripping us off for years, Jamie.
Yes, sir.
Jamie, do you mind if I call you Jamie? Yes.
No, sir.
We got to just get this trade deficit down.
Yes,
no
sir.
one's ripping us off anymore.
Yes, sir. Now, I'm telling you, in my view, to get it down to a zero trade deficit, I think the only way to achieve that is complete and total decoupling from China. I think that you would have to bring the total trade to zero and the trade deficit will be zero. No trade, no deficit.
They wouldn't be ripping us off anymore. But no trade at all, that could be a tough one.
I'm sorry, sir, but that's my view. The items that we listed in the trade representative report from March, these are structural components, I believe, that we'd be going after. A total level playing field is antithetical, I think, to the current Chinese leadership. They might agree to it. Now, they might agree in writing, but they will not agree to any sort of serious way to enforce it. And they will get what they want right now, which is just back to the status quo, but they'll have no intention of following through. I think we saw something like that in phase one. Now, unless there is a completely new philosophical change from the Chinese leadership, I don't think they will in the near future. I mean, these barriers, I believe, are not going away, no matter the tariff level. And through deferring tactics, like deflecting to the superficial export controls and the tariffs, they're going to wait it out. You can play tough, 1,000% tariffs. But I think the stock and bond markets will revolt if it goes on too long and they start to believe you, and you'll be forced to pull back. I think that's their game plan, sir. 2026, keep in mind, those are the midterms. That's a timer for you, not them, sir. Now, I think a win for us will simply to be get rid of the export controls and be able to land a slightly higher tariff. I think that's the best we can hope for.
Your lack of faith is a little disturbing, Luke. I mean, Jamie, listen, your lack of faith is just disturbing right now. Okay, we're going to get this done. 26, the Democrats don't stand a chance no matter what.
Yes, sir.
We're going to make this happen.
Now, if that's your goal, zero trade deficit, then I think zero trade is the solution.
No trade deficit, no longer ripping us off, but also we're getting Americans back to work. That's also my goal. What's it look like if we take that angle?
Yes, sir. So I think in that case, the conversation doesn't necessarily happen in a discussion with the Chinese. I mean, I think we need to make manufacturing cheaper and more attractive here. Those subsidies help. cheaper energy and utilities, easier
You,
regulations, building and investment
yeah, we
stuff.
do.
Stuff.
Have you seen the manufacturing jobs numbers? Just phenomenal. They're huge. They're really huge.
Yes,
Now,
sir.
we haven't gotten a report recently because of the Schumer Democrat shutdown, but it'll come back and we'll see these manufacturing jobs are pouring back in.
Yes, sir. Um, Now, what I worry about, though, sir, a tough stance against the Chinese here might even backfire against the American worker. For we wouldn't be able to sell any of our goods and services to China, and it just because we no longer buy anything from them doesn't mean that factories will necessarily spring up in the U.S. It just means that the goods will be purchased from the number two spot in the global, hierarchy of producers. So, I mean, what do they sell us? Computer equipment, textiles, stuff like that. I mean, the number two option for that isn't necessarily in the US. It might be other Asian countries. We could probably see an increase in imports from Indonesia and Vietnam, not an improvement directly to the US worker. I just don't necessarily see a direct line between these negotiations and the American worker, unfortunately. The direct line is probably with a supplier like China and the American consumer, who I think does get value, decent quality, good price.
What about America? What should I do to put America first? That's what this is all about.
Pure, real politics, sir.
America first. Say it with me, Jamie.
America
America
first, sir.
first.
Yes, sir.
That's right.
I don't know, sir. It's all about priorities. If you want to prioritize fair trade, American workers, American consumers, national security, what do you think is the number one priority, sir? And scene. All right. Woo. Yeah, nice job. Thank you, Joe. Woo. I hope you had some fun with it. Nice work,
Yeah.
Joe. I thought that was kind of a fun way to deliver the message. Kind of just like some high level takes as to what I genuinely think is going to happen. It was consistent with that episode we did, I don't know, a couple months ago, back when the first sort of volley of the trade war started, and I did the analysis briefly of China.
That one got a lot of views. It was great.
All right, you can turn it off now, Joe.
I'm still just thinking
still
like
in
him
character,
right now.
yeah.
Numbers, big things.
You're still in character. Yeah, no, that was a relatively popular episode. But I kind of stand, my analysis there hasn't really changed. And again, I can say from like personal experience when I lived there for 4 years and I worked in market research, it's true. I mean, that report read accurate. Like and it felt like a fair report. And I remember I was like reading it again, sort of for this kind of in preparation for this, man. And you start to get kind of like upset. I mean, it really is, there's definitely different values internally that every human feels, some more than others, but certainly, my sense of fairness, it really perks up. I mean, they're playing by, I think, different rules, quite literally. It's tempting. I'm a little bit, it's tempting to be like, Trump, go all in, see what happens. Like the other thing, it's not as though with the heavy rare earth stuff, okay, yes, that's a critical component in, a lot of different products. I found some cool websites that really summarized where that stuff's used. But it's not like it's going to land on food. It's not like people aren't going to be able to eat if these export controls go up or, completely decoupling with China. It's not as though I'm not going to be able to heat my home. I mean, and maybe it's selfish of me to say that because like, of decent means. But it's like tempting. But at the same time, I want to see him succeed here. I do. I want to see the trade deficit go to zero. I want to see, us sell more stuff to China and, help the American worker and all that. But if I'm just being like totally honest, I just can't see it happening.
Yeah, that's definitely a good. So that's touching on like the point of leverage, more or less, right? Like, does he have enough leverage to get all that done? Well, one of the things, like just past couple days this week, I thought was kind of interesting. Are you familiar with like in detail Xi's announcement, I think like end of last week, saying like he was doing these export controls, but like not just to the U.S., around the world.
So that's
So
yeah, just real quick, I think they are called export controls. For a little while I was like, no, these are sanctions. I mean, we don't like using that word sanction against the US. We sort of think as though only the US can, do sanctions, but is that not what China's doing? And I think export control
but
is the right term because they're just not even exporting anything anywhere. Sanction
yeah,
is like more
that's the
targeted.
key point.
Sanction, like,
Hmm.
Russian sanctions mean, yeah, you can still like export stuff, just not to Russia. And then you make sure that no one's trying to get their stuff to Russia. That's what a sanction is. This is like, we're not exporting this anywhere. And I think that's probably just purely a practical reason that they're not trying to punish the whole world. They just know that if they could export it anywhere, then it could just end up in the US.
Well, I think that's what it implies, though, is that it is punishing the whole world. That's at
I don't
least
think they
how
want to.
Besant characterized it at this
Sure. Okay.
press
Well,
conference he
he
did
can play
yesterday. Now,
politics.
again,
He
yeah.
can play politics.
But one of the things that did happen, so just in terms of leverage, again, one of the things I did see just this week, I think there is a perception, not just among the U.S., that this could be a bit of an overreach by China. Like other countries are going to be impacted as well, therefore they're also very unhappy. It's like trade alliances, I think, is the big thing. So before China did this, there was this view that if Trump plays hardball too much, China will rally, other countries to align more with China. And then in the end, over the long term, the US will be most damaged, right? They make really good trade deals with everyone else but the US. Like Xi Jinping was with Modi in India, like on this trade posturing thing, kind of sending that message to the world like a few weeks ago. But this one, if does push it a little too far, and this is affecting all other countries in the world, what Trump has been trying to do so far this week is trying to do just the same thing. So I think one of the clearest ones was the prime minister of Germany, I believe, kind of either alluded to or said outright, like, yes, we'll join you in this united effort if China is going to do this. So he's obviously, Western Europe, the NATO countries. I think he's done a really good job actually of just kind of whipping them into line, and they just kind of do whatever he says, to be honest. Like you look at how he's changed. Well, you give me that face, but the big thing that he did was he got all of the NATO members to increase their defense spending from 2% to 5%. It wasn't since Richard Nixon, an American president, was able to get the other members to increase their spending. So that's a big, big shift, number one. And even with like, I don't want to go into this, but even like the Gaza thing, he, at the beginning of this week, there was a big event about it. But just a few days before that, Emmanuel Macron in France and Starmer in Britain, they had these announcements talking about the Palestinian state, like kind of not going along with the peace deal. And then once Trump came out with this, they just shut up really quick. And they both traveled to the event and smiled and waved and shook Trump's hand, and they fell into line, is what I'm saying.
I don't know. With the NATO thing, like, again, I'm not too familiar with the details here, but didn't he just like stop kind of paying like two things happened. One was there was a new aggression over in Europe, and then he just stopped paying the bill. I also object to the idea of falling in line. This is something I'm like, or the U.S. can make other countries fall in line. The other thing is, I don't know, and this is just purely going off of some of the stuff I'm reading on X. There's a lot of hatred, and I don't know if I'm just like tuned in to some funky corners of X or something, and I didn't spend a whole lot of time looking into this, but
It's
wow, a
got some
lot of
funky
countries really
corners.
hate, yeah, a lot of vitriol, spewed against the U.S. They love to see, after the other narrative is just that, oh, well, the U.S. went out and sent out these tariffs to every country. And now the other countries are so excited to see, one country actually stand up to this bullying that is the U.S. So they want to see China win, and they want to give America a taste of its own medicine. That was like just scrolling through a little bit. I don't know how much of that is genuine.
Yeah. So like, who is they though? Like, did you have any sense of like where it
Just a
might be
bunch of just
concentrated, or
just a
just
bunch of posts. Exactly. So I don't
Russian
know.
bots, Luke?
Sorry.
No, I'm
Yeah,
kidding.
right.
Russian
It's
bots.
impossible. It really is impressive how
Yeah.
if you just see the same thing over and over again, you start to form just a broader opinion about, oh,
Yeah.
this is just me. Like when you just got to take a step back and say, I really have no idea. And that's definitely the case here. I really have no idea, but seems to be a lot. Um,
That's why
that's right.
primary sources only, Luke.
Yes. Thank you, Joe. Yes. Primary sources here. The other thing that I really don't have a view into that I really wish I understood better was like the Chinese economy. I mean, I did some research here, but everything I read felt stretched. It's so opaque into kind of what they're thinking, what even kind of the right numbers are, uh, to say like where the soft spots are. So like,
Right.
the deflation thing, that's one thing. I don't know. No one knows what like how much credit is floating around there. I don't think anyone, I don't get the impression that
Well,
anyone
no,
really
there's.
knows how much credit is like sloshing around in China. Some
I
numbers you
mean,
look
maybe
up and
not
they're
as
like,
precisely, but
yeah, it's over the US already. Or it's like, the money supply has been growing well in excess of, what the actual GDP is. But I don't know who has those numbers? Who has like M2 numbers really?
I saw something like maybe like a year ago now, talking about the Chinese government has been systematically ceasing publications of particular data sources. Like one of which was like new elementary school registrations or something like that. It was probably a Bloomberg thing, but I just did a really quick search. I found one from the Financial Post. I'm not even sure what that is. China stops publishing data highlighting solar power constraints. I'll go back and find some more official sources on it because I think this is a really important point. But just scanning through this Sydney Morning Herald article from 2 years ago, while much of its data is disappearing quietly, the decision to hold back the jobless rate was announced at a press briefing. National Bureau of Statistics has a history of halting releases that are uncomplimentary for the economy, but they don't usually make the decision public. Look at some of the data sets that have been restricted recently: youth unemployment, land sales. Numbers showing the amount of land developers bought and the price they paid have been missing from the monthly release. The series goes back to 1998. So this was over 2 years ago now. Currency reserves. Another curious data point is the amount of money the government holds in foreign exchange assets, which was held remarkably steady since 2017. Oh, wait a minute. Bond transactions. Even data from the private sector has become unavailable. The bond market was plunged into chaos March 2023 after fixed income brokers stopped supplying aggregated bond quotes to data vendors. They're stopping publishing numbers about joblessness. We do have their inflation numbers still, and they've been in deflationary territory for a number of quarters now. So I guess I'm just saying that, yeah, the American economy has been showing cracks for months now. But I think the Chinese economy has even looked shakier for like the past couple of years now.
Yeah, I mean, I think one of the biggest differences you and I have, kind of in our views here, is I'm quite bullish on China. We're a little more bearish. I do think that they're going to kind of surpass the U.S. You're definitely making some hard bear cases here, but I think the underlying fundamentals are still really good on China. I always thought that until I did that one on the Jin Keyu. Remember that? And she feels the same way. All the fundamentals are really there. Human capital, um, all that kind of stuff is there. It's still there. But the main finding I had is the fact that Xi Jinping and the current Chinese party have been just trading power for economic growth. So I maintain that the fundamentals are there, but I think that the system that's currently in place is far too restrictive. I think that's one of the biggest questions. Then is like, what does the succession look like in China? If it's going to be if it's going to be a Xi-like figure, which emphasizes kind of centralized control, I think that you start to see like this huge demographic wave that's going to start hitting China in like 20ish years, I think.
Well, that's like kind of guaranteed,
That one is
right?
guaranteed. The question is like the demographic the demographic wave is coming. Um, it's what leader is kind of going to be there to face it if it's going to be more centralized control. I think that's one of the most critical questions in the world. That's definitely that's huge. And so to the kind of even to take another even deep farther step back for this, like how, if, when China is going to eclipse America as like the number one superpower. I think those are like the two things: that wave, the demographic wave, and then kind of what the philosophy is at the top after Xi Jinping's gone.
Yeah, that's a great question. And just on the topic of China, I wonder how much demand is there for to do more China themed videos. But I'd really like to just myself go into more, or research more what the public data sets are, like what is available, what do they say. Side question then is which ones existed 2 years ago, which don't anymore. What does that mean? Just to get a more informed view, primary source view.
Exactly. Yep. That's what we're here for to do. All right, man. Well, that's all I had for you today, Joe. Hope you had fun.
You mean Donald?
Yeah. Thanks, Mr. Trump. Yes, sir.
I definitely had fun.
Great. All right. Well, this has been another episode of the Root of All Evil podcast. I'm Luke.
And I'm Joe.
See you next week.
See you then.